Morning light so bright, hope is rising high. Feel the change inside, better days inside. AFC stands tall, hear the freedom call. Together we will rise, victory now rise. Better must come, hey, feeling it today. Better must come, hey, AFC will lead the way.
Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of our great and lovely Guyana. A special good evening to you, and welcome to this special edition of Alliance for Change live stream, where we will delve into the history of the Alliance for Change on this celebration of our 19th anniversary. The Alliance for Change, which was started on the October 29th, 2005, by three founding members, Raphael Trotman, Kemraj Ramjatan, and the late Sheila Holder. I want to take this opportunity to recognize those persons that would have started this movement that has become a catalyst of change in Guyana. Tonight, we have a load sum of persons here on this panel, and persons with great respect in this country. And before I go into those persons and bring those guests on tonight, I would like to introduce you to my co-hosts. First of all, my name is Onyx Duncan, if I did not say, but my name is Onyx Duncan, Vice President of the Youth for Change, which is the youth arm of the Alliance for Change. And tonight with me is my co-host, Brian Nobriga, the treasurer of the Youth for Change. Brian.
Good night, Onyx. Good night, viewers. It's a pleasure to be here and to discuss this very important issue, the history of the party that we are a part of, on this our 19th anniversary. Good night.
All right. I know we're Youth for Change, Brian. Before we delve in further, I would just like to let the viewers understand how we became a part of the party and how we see the party today and from when we started. So for me, I became a member of this party in 2022 or thereabout, but I've always gravitated towards the Alliance for Change. And from then to now, I've seen multiple changes in regards to the diversity of the people that we see here at the Alliance for Change, the members that we have, and the work that we put in. I feel as though it is a party of inclusivity. It's a multiracial party, and we are going places. And like our leader always say, better must come. Brian, let our viewers know when you started, because I know you've been around for quite some time, Brian.
Yeah, so I might be doing a little bit of the history tonight if I when I go back, because I became a member in 2010 when I was invited to a youth seminar that was being held by one of the campaign managers, Mrs. Salim Narsidine. That was back when we were over in Campbellville. And from then I have been loyal to this party and been a member to this party and helping this party grow from strength to strength. And today I am here, continuing.
14 years later. All right. The history of the AFC, then, now, and the future. Tonight, our panel includes our co-founder, former leader, former public security minister, and member of parliament, Kemraj Ramjatan. Good evening to you, sir.
Thank you, and a very good evening on this very important occasion of the Alliance for Change.
All right. And tonight, also with us, we have former vice chair of the AFC and member of parliament, Cathy Hughes.
Don't forget.
Good evening to you, Cathy.
Hi, good to be with you this evening.
All right. And current chairman of the AFC and member of parliament, David Patterson.
Hi, good night, Onyx, Brian, and colleagues. Good night, viewers. My absolute pleasure to be here this evening.
All right, and we're moving on with our panelists. Next, former minister within the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, Valerie Garrido Lowe. Good evening to you, madam. Valerie will be coming in via phone for viewers, because she's all the way in Region 1. So our members, like we said earlier, members are diverse and dispersed in all parts of Guyana. So Valerie is in Region 1 for all the viewers listening out there in Facebook land and social media. And last but not least, the man that is a catalyst of change currently, our leader and former chairman also, Mr. Nigel Hughes.
Hi, good evening. Hi, Onyx, good evening. Thank you for hosting this very, I believe, what will become historic broadcast. And good evening to co-founder, Kemraj, those that were there at the start, David, Cathy, and of course your co-host, Brian. I think we might have lost Valerie, but good evening to her too.
All right. So tonight, I want to say happy anniversary to the Alliance for Change. It's been 19 years, and I think it's on this auspicious occasion that we host something of this stature, where we speak about the history heading into our 20th year, and also heading into what I would want to say the mother of all elections, 2025, so that persons can understand, the citizenry can understand where we came from, where we are at now, and where we are heading. So tonight, I want to first go into asking some questions in regards to where we were, or where you were at the time of your political life in the Alliance for Change. And tonight, I'm going to put that question first to Cathy Hughes. So let us know a little about when you started the Alliance for Change and how you became a member, which is very important. How you became a member of the Alliance for Change and what brought you into this movement.
So, thank you, Onyx. I have such fond memories of the start of my involvement with the Alliance for Change. And it actually happened, they were having a kind of like a small gathering, a little kind of cocktail get together. And I remember I had been invited to it, and I was invited by Raphael Trotman. And I remember at this gathering thinking this was just absolutely great. I had actually come back to live in Guyana after being away for 14 years. I'd just gotten married. I'd started a business. I was all excited about shaping a new life in Guyana. But I was getting very, very frustrated because I thought as a young person, there were so many fundamental things that seemed to be holding us back. And of course, the politics of Guyana continues to be as it was then. You're introduced or you're stepping forward, and it's like, oh, is she got to be PNC, or you're either PNC or you're PPP, and there was nowhere in between. And I actually didn't feel that the politics of Guyana should continue like that. I was very, very fortunate to go to school at a time when there was free education, and my classes and my friends and everything about how I grew up was so multicultural. And now here I was back, and you had to fit into this slot. So there I was at this reception, excited that Camarade Sheila and Raphael had decided to form this party. And I remember, saying to Raphael, "Oh, this is so great! I congratulated all of them on the idea. Guyana needs this." And in speaking to Raphael that night, he said to me, "Well, we're gonna need help." And I thought, "You're gonna need help? Yeah, need my help." And Rafa said to me, yeah, we need people like you to come on board in this movement. And I said, "Well, okay, I suppose I could help." He said, "Well, especially in the marketing and the media part, which was my area."
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, let me," I said, "Yeah, man, give me a call if you need any help." If that was the Friday night, the Monday I got a call from Raphael. And he said to me, "Look, we're having a meeting. Would you come?" So I went to this meeting. In fact, the meeting was at Christopher Ram's office because he was very involved in the party then.
Mhm.
And I attended about 3 or 4 meetings, and I was supposed to be part of this marketing team. Very interested in the discussion. But after the 4th meeting, I said to Raphael, "Is there anybody else in this marketing team? Because I only seen myself." And he said, "Yeah, guess what? You were the marketing team." And the rest is history, Onyx. That's how
Wow.
I started.
So, Kati, you said the rest is history. I wanted to know at the time, were you yourself and Sheila, were you like the only women that were at the head of the team at the time, or were there other women that stepped up to the plate?
There were many women that stepped up to the plate. Of course, Nicola Trotman, we have to acknowledge that a lot of the early discussions, I think, took place in her kitchen. We had quite a few of our long lasting members. Raphael's sister, Nande, was very involved. Members of Kemraj's family. We started off with a very strong women's group. And as you know, it developed into Women for Change. And we've had members that have been with us, for a very long time. So I'm proud of that fact. Sheila really became my mentor. Sheila was involved a bit in politics because she had represented the WPA and had been in parliament. Politics was a totally new thing for me, so to speak. And the push for me was when Raphael said, "We can't do this alone." And I thought to myself, why is it I want to be like everybody else and have somebody else participate and fix and get involved? And I kind of just want to sit in the corner safe and sound. And it was after Sheila's passing. The sad thing is, Onyx, I will admit, I was terrified of publicly acknowledging I was a member of the AFC just because I knew the politics of the day. And I was very worried about the victimization that my company would face and my businesses. So I hid in the background. I would organize the press releases, do all kinds of things, but never step forward. And it was Sheila that said to me one day, "If you believe in this, why don't you stand up and claim that this is what you believe in?" And here I am.
All right. All right. One more question before I go on to the other panelists, Kati. At the time when you started the party, where was your head? Where was the party? And where had you seen yourself probably 19 years ago? And do you think you would have still been here today with the Alliance for Change?
I I had never been a member of any political party. I was very, very careful about looking at the environment, and there really was no one had a philosophy that excited me. As a young person, I really did not want to be drawn into the same old, same old. I knew then, even before oil, that Guyana had so much potential, so much we could do. And I think I was just very, in a kind of a way, maybe I was an upstart because I kept thinking, I ain't waiting my whole life for Guyana to realize this potential. Let's get up and go. And we were very fortunate that there were so many like-minded people around. You know, Onyx, when we were formed in October of 2005, and by 2006 there was an election. And I remember us saying, we haven't been around for a long time. It isn't even a year. Should we run? But we decided we were going to run just for the experience. And the fact that then, on our first outing, we got 6 seats. Of course, they only ever gave us 5. Right. So imagine that meant that there was a substantial amount of Guyanese that identified with this new political party and were willing to vote for us. Having that kind of support, we could only work and build on it. It's been challenging, but I wouldn't change it for the world. And I just hope we can really continue. We've been battered. We've been bruised. We're the ones that everybody cusses up. But guess what? 19 years later, we are that young adult. We've taken our place. And I think the political landscape is better for having an AFC in it.
Nice. Kati, it was a pleasure speaking with you. But before we go, any final words to our listening public, to the citizenry, as we head into, this new change that we all want to see in 2025?
It's difficult to take a decision to get involved in politics. I was very lucky that both my husband and my father were very instrumental. But I want to just leave a thought that my dad used to share with me. He would always say, stop complaining. Stop complaining about all that is wrong. Get up and try and do something about it. If you do nothing, you are where you are, or things could be worse. If you step forward and try to change it, who knows what difference you could make. And really, every single person can make a difference in some small or in some big way.
Thank you so much, Kati. It was a pleasure, like I said, speaking with you. And we do hope that, not hope, we know 2025 will be a year of change.
Absolutely. Onyx, thank you. I'm sorry I have to dash off, but thank you for having me. And I look forward to looking at the program.
All right. Brian.
Yes, that was a very nostalgic, brings back so much memories of the party in the up-and-coming days, there was only one more thing I would have wanted to ask you, but I'll save it for one of the other panelists as they come in. It has to do with how the party positions itself in the early days against the other political parties over here. And I'm sure our next panelists would be eager to jump into that and shed some light on that.
Yes. Before we head into our next speaker panelist tonight, I want to play a clip from our launch on October 29, 2005 of our past co-founder, Ms. Sheila Holder. So the technical crew, I hope that we have that clip so that we can head into that.
On one such outreach visit, I remember being summoned to get to a particular village by a certain time because the person who wanted to speak with us was traveling out of the country that very afternoon. We fulfilled the request and arrived in time to be told by the gentleman that he had to see us to tell us directly that for him and many others in his community, we represented hope for change for the better. He told us about the years he and his family had spent supporting Dr. Jagan and about the exploits he had engaged in during Dr. Jagan's long stint in opposition, only to be disappointed with the level of governance in our country. He said he had taken the decision to throw his weight behind this movement. He extended an offer to assist the movement in any way he could, and asked to be excused to go catch a flight. On a whim, I inquired about the reason for his overseas visit, and this was what he said to us. Pointing to a scar on the side of his neck, he revealed he had cancer and was going overseas for medical treatment, but wanted to talk to us before departing to let us know how strongly he felt about what we had embarked upon. He said that for him, it was a ray of hope he longed for, that change was possible, since he needed to have a reason to live to fight the cancer ravaging his body. What is this change that people are seeing in this movement? Clearly, it means different things to different people. To us, it means addressing the high cost of living that has become a heavy burden on the backs of our people. To us, it means bringing an end to the abuse of state power and the resources of the state for the benefit of a few. To us, it means bringing political stability to Ghana, governing our country fairly and equitably. It means removing the fear and overturning the falsehood associated with splitting the vote that dominates our political culture, which provides the basis and the justification for racial voting patterns that have left us mired in poverty, corruption, and underdevelopment. What change does not mean, from my perspective, is that we should fall prey to the trickery and the shenanigans of some political players because they dare to invoke the moral argument in the absence of a solid legal one. I urge you to take note of the political and civil immorality practiced by some who make bold to advance such an argument, and to understand that in this political environment, there is far more in the pot than you can possibly see, and we could possibly reveal at the moment. So take what you hear with a grain of salt. As a new movement for change, it would be foolish for us to believe that we could change this political environment that was spawned on bickering, incivility, racial strife, and profiling, dishonesty, and treachery by allowing others to set our agenda. The fact that we have printed a program that excluded the names of the other participants is indicative of the trickery and the treachery with which we have to deal with in local politics.
There you have it. Sheila Holder, may her soul rest in peace, co-founder of the Alliance for Change. Want to move on to our next panelist, who was no stranger to us, and another co-founder of the Alliance for Change, Kemraj Ramjatan, Member of Parliament. Welcome again to you, Kemraj.
Thank you very much, Onyx.
I know that you saw that clip there earlier with Sheila, and that was at Ocean View International Hotel at Lillian-Dar, right?
Conference
Center.
That's right.
Yes, Conference Center. How was the feeling?
Conference Center. Yeah.
The Conference Center.
Mm-hmm.
How was the feeling when you guys launched the Alliance for Change then?
Onyx, we had certain trepidations because I was a little worried that there was going to be a big turnout. I wanted a huge turnout. And as it turned out to be, from the very, very beginning, we saw all these cars start coming in, and almost everybody that we gave invitations to, including the diplomatic corps, the major businessmen of the day, and the professional people, all of them turned up, or at least sent a representative, and we had a packed conference room. And of course, the members from the various regions, indigenous communities, they also came out. And it was just a fantastic day for the launch of this very important political movement. I was so happy almost everybody that supported us in the movement, that is, from my family, were so proud. And I'm certain that goes for Sheila Holder and Raphael Trotman and families and so on. And for almost everybody there, we start shaking up the political landscape by virtue of that first instance development. And so it was a fantastic feeling, Onyx. And we had a lot of young people. As a matter of fact, if I may tell you, we had gotten information from a Rights of Child Express Yourself survey, in which young people especially had come out indicating that 69% of them at that point in time felt that if they weren't changed in the political landscape, they wanted to go away and live overseas. Almost 70%. Could you imagine? And then at that stage in Guyana, we had about 8 out of every 10 Guyanese qualifying from the University of Guyana wanting to leave the country. And I think we're outside of the country because the overseas, the graduates were so much going overseas to find jobs and so on. So we had a tremendous impact, and we felt very proud, and we felt very excited about now that being the first step, a launch, that we're going to move on. I must tell you that just before the launch, myself and Sheila Holder and Raphael Trotman, as members of parliament, one from the PPP, one from the PNC, and Sheila Holder had taken on the seat from the WPA, I think it was. But there is a combination of parties, I think inclusive of Roar, that she had become the representative there. And we had started talking to each other that we needed a bigger movement, as it were, for healing and reconciliation, because Guyana was very much polarized at the time. And there was lots of economic problems. There was a lot of high crime rate. Crime was high. We had the Buxton problems and so on. Salaries for public servants were not being increased, or there was just about a big fight a couple of years before or a couple of months before for increased salaries. And so we had lots of problems in the country, and there was a general sense of hopelessness and so on. And those were some of the objective factors that were compelling us to get on board for a new movement, rather than the PNC and the PPP, which was heavily polarized. They didn't want to talk to each other. I myself from the PPP was trying to tell the PPP's leadership, we have to talk together. But they were getting very, very bad with me. As a matter of fact, two or 3 years before that, I was expelled from the party, the People's Progressive Party, on very foolish grounds by a kangaroo court and so on. They tell me that in the typical communist method, Ramjatan, you are doing activities detrimental to the party. And you know, the Stalinism and the commandism and the central democratic centralism of the party. I was expelled. So I decided that I am not going to leave the parliament, but I'm going to stay there, and I'm going to continue the process of talking to Raphael and Sheila and so on. And then I think it's a couple of years before that too, 2005, we were, as a 3 parliamentarians, we were asked by the World Bank to go to Helsinki in Finland for a parliamentary program on economics and parliamentary governance. And when we went there, we also started talking, because we were now, you know, in a more private arrangement. Yeah. We could talk. Yeah, and for about, I think it was a 10 days program or a 2 weeks program. And we had a wonderful occasion there trying to deal with the issue as to whether indeed there is need for a third movement that can bridge, especially the ethnic gap that we saw in the country. And there were also some subjective elements, like the fact that I was expelled. I think Raphael was having some problems inside of his party too. And of course, Sheila. And there were some also what I would regard combined reasons or considerations was the external one. You had objective factors, you had subjective factors, and the external one was that we were being asked by a lot of our diaspora members from the PDP, the PNC, WPA, and generally the independents. Why y'all in form a different political party than the two that is dominating? And even the diplomatic community that we used to talk to were saying that you three guys are, with a lot of other support. David Patterson was there, Kathy Hughes, and so many people were there indicating that they would love to support this thing. And even the diplomatic corps was seeing all of this. And they too were asking, well, give it a shot. And we got support from diaspora members. I could remember that initially we were asking around for cash and so on to start the movement. And a number of my relatives came forward. I remember, I think we named a room in the conference center there, Sankar Nirahu. He came up with a substantial amount to offset the cost of all these things. He was a wonderful guy. He died too young, but the trouble with we were having financially at that time, because as you know, the PPP were telling its business community friends and so on, look, y'all don't give them money. Y'all make sure that you don't do that, this and so on, because they know what is the mother's milk of a political organization. It is finances. Yeah. And so to that extent, we were being bombarded by the PPP especially. And of course, also at the other extreme end was the PNC. Mr. Corbyn had some negative words to talk about us. But we managed, because I think this, what you call the convergence of factors and considerations that came at that point in time, it was so opportune then, with the support coming from the various quarters and the objective and subjective factors helping in the process, we then launched. And it was a magnificent launch. A lot of the newspapers had very nice words to talk about it, excepting, of course, the state rag in the PPP.
So, Mr. Ramjatan, you listed us several members just now that would have played a role in the formation of the party. Would you like to list some more members? So
yeah, I would like to. The question was asked to Kathy. Yeah, I would like to say that there was Gumati Singh, who was a staunch supporter and stalwart at the very beginning. Because remember, we just didn't launch in 2005. We had to be doing a lot of talking and arranging for about 2 or 3 years before, talking to these people. And we had also Chantal Smith, was another powerful woman organizer. She literally wrote a number of the very excellent manuals for us, organizational manual, the financial manual, and a number of other things, and so on. And then there was Stephen Fraser, because we wanted to have a constitution, a liberal democratic constitution, because the PPP had Marxism, Leninism, and communism in its constitution. I hated those things, and I had problems with them. At the 2002 Congress at Port Morant, I proceeded to do a resolution to get rid of those hardline ideological positionings and so on. But it is important to understand that there are lots of other players. You would have seen from that program that you just showed, Tony Vera was there. Yes. You had a very active fellow named David Ali from the Essequibo. And we had a number of people from Berbice. I was pretty popular at Berbice there. And we had a lot of relatives, because when you start political organizations, I must tell you that it is your relatives you go to first for financial support, moral support, and so on. And I was very much supported because, of course, the PPP had expelled me, and a lot of them were very angry and so on. So we managed to get a number of these people. I remember businessmen like Sankar, Benny Sankar was there. We had people from England, Kasim Baksh in America and Canada, and so on. A lot of people, names I forgot. I mean, I get on at age too, but there were very many people, and they're all there. When you play that thing, the excerpt, you'll see them. It was a massive set of people that came to that, and that was just representative.
So, Mr. Ramjitan, would you like to tell the viewers about what was the principles that the AFC wished to establish at its formation to set it aside from the other political parties that were being in the deal? What made it different?
Well, it was largely healing and reconciliation. Our community, our country was split.
Look like we lost cameras here.
Yeah.
All right. So we lost cameras, but there you have a little history. But I want to, while we try to get back, the technical team try to get back cameras, we will come back to that point. If the technical team can bring up Camerad's speech from October 29, 2005 at Conference Center there at Liliendahl, that would be very much welcome.
Others cajoling that this movement must happen. The old politics of suspicion, spite, and strife will get us nowhere except infecting in our psyche a migratory culture and the celebration of mediocrity. And it is not only a migration out of Guyana, but a migration from good values, good standards, good beliefs, ethical conduct, and moving away from the decent to the indecent, as it were, resulting in that land of mediocrity. This slide, however, must be halted and halted forthwith. Thus, the reason for this political movement, which shall endeavor to alter the political landscape of our country, to transform the mindset out of the existing doldrums to new energy and activity, to release the champions in us. Brothers and sisters, this is not beyond us. To realize this new realm will require at the beginning a minimum effort. All that it should take is that we must choose change. Let me hear you. We have to choose what? Yes, it's time. Choosing change is the key to realization of this new realm. Choosing change is the first step to unlocking this country's potential. And you must remember this: not to change is to remain in the ethnic enclaves we have persisted in for over 4 decades. Not to change is to remain in polarized politics permanently. Not to change is to remain in the quandary of never venturing out into issue-based politics, but staying the course of race-based politics. Not to change is to remain in a deformed and distorted development process.
All right, there you have it. And I must say this, Brian. Kemraj has the same tenacity he had in 2005 right now. It's the same Kemraj. It's just a different stature and feature.
Yes.
Kemraj, we just listened to your speech in 2005, and you have the same vigor, resilience that you had then.
Okay.
And you spoke about unlocking the potential of our country. Let's go back to that point you were making when we lost you.
Yeah, well, it is, as I was saying there, the point was healing and reconciliation in view of the heavily polarized system we had. And we wanted to create a bridge, especially between the ethnicities, that probably could just shun the political parties of the day, because they were the ones that were holding the country back, in our opinion. And so this bridge creation and having this society conversing with each other, because people like Justin didn't want to talk to each other. I mean, it hasn't gone away. We still have that very much today. But because of the Lands for Change, at least they have a space in which they can now come and do the necessary conversations that are required in this society. And so it is in that context, then we will always find that in Guyana, there is a complete relevance for the Alliance for Change. And I'm glad that we are carrying it on. There are times when, of course, we'd have to, and I had made mention of it there, we're going to find ourselves with lots of challenges, but we have to make sure that we get succeeding generations of leadership to ensure that this thing is carried through to a longer life term. And I'm so happy that, you know, at our last national conference, we managed to get Nigel coming in so that people of your generation can now stand on the shoulders of the Nigel Hughes that have taken over.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ramsington. On that point, could you remember the political climate that the country was in 2005 and how it has changed now due to the AFC coming on stream and becoming the mega party that it is right now?
Well, because as I mentioned it just now, the creation of this political bridge to at least get the people from the PNC side and the PPP side to talk more, and at least to create a space that if they didn't want to talk, that at least they could come on board with the Alliance for Change. And that is why we have done so well as a political party. Prior to that formation and launch, there was tremendous polarization. It created problems in a 1999-2001 period that saw lots of demonstrations and more fire and slow fire, you know, all kinds of things. And it was not necessarily as we in the PPP, I was from the PPP then, was thinking that it's PNC is the problem. I really felt that the PPP was also the problem because they don't want to talk. They don't want to give space. They were so centralist. And I tried as best as possible. I recall having very many private chats in the parliamentary room with Mr. Desmond Hoyt. He somehow, I respected him tremendously. And I liked the fact that, you know, what he did in 92 and so on. And we used to chat plenty. And the PPP never used to like me for that. I used to say, well, we have to talk to each other. We are going to be opponents in the political competition, but that does not mean that we can't talk. And Mr. Hart used to give some very powerful addresses in Parliament, and the PPP just want to heckle and boo and whatever. We used to have a lot of powerful speakers on our side too. Ripudaman Prasad was one. And the PNC would just heckle and you know, do the same thing. So we didn't like that political culture. And what Raphael, myself, and Sheila Holder wanted was, and we talk about it plenty after that program in Helsinki, that indeed there is need for this creation of a healing and reconciliation movement. And it was that largely that got us involved. I was involved from a very young age. 1975, I joined the PYO in 47 Village. So I knew the traditions of the PPP, especially under the Jagans, which was a highly moral movement. But after seeing what was happening and then being expelled by Jagdeo and so on, and the immorality and the corruption that was happening inside, corruption didn't start now, you know, long time with all of them there. And it just continues right now. So we decided that let us move that. Now we have tried as best as possible to change things. And I think we have changed a number of things, especially during the course of that 2015-2020 period. But of course, things fell back. There was a degrading of the situation, a retrogression of the situation because of that. Charan Das no confidence supported motion and so on. And so we have, the PPP is back now. But what has happened is the corruption has gotten so big now because of the oil monies. There's so much monies now. And a lot of them are just, as I like to say, they spend it as if, you know, they own the bloody country's coffers. They are trustees and they don't understand that. And that is why we still remain relevant.
Yeah. All right, comrades. One final question before we bring on the next guest. 2006, a year later from formation of the Alliance for Change, You guys went in, the Alliance for Change went into national elections, and you got about 28,366 votes and 5 seats. How did you feel about that? Did you know, or were you hopeful that you would have, gained so much seats at that time? And also, who were the persons that went to Parliament to take up those seats? If you could remember.
Well, I based on and knowing the scenarios of third force politics in Guyana, I was happy with the fact, and I was thinking about it, that at least we should get about 5-6 seats. And when we were doing some polls too, the polls were indicating lots more.
You were supposed to have 7 seats.
But I had, yes. No, we were supposed, actually, we won 6 seats, but the PPP took away 1, and they gave it to Sam Hines. And because of it was an error of numbers only on the board, they counted up the thing wrong. And Steve Searles-Valley was saying that the PPP should give us back the 6 seats and take out that extra seat that they got as a result. But then the PPP argued that, look, you can only do change seating arrangements by an elections petition, which we won, but it was won almost at the end of the 5-year term.
5 year.
So it didn't matter much. But the whole indicated there, we wanted to get more seats, and we just didn't, because let me tell you something, it is very difficult in ethnic society or politics based on ethnicity to break into the ranks. But having 5 seats, we did a magnificent job. A number of people in the Caribbean, the diaspora overseas, they said y'all did magnificently. And so we had to be proud of it. And then the people that we named in Parliament was myself, Raphael, Sheila Holder, Chantal Smith, and who was the 5th person we named? David Patterson? I think it was David Patterson.
Okay. David.
Yes, David Patterson.
You are wrong. Welcome again to tonight's History of the AFC, Then, Now, and the Future, Chairman of the Alliance for Change. Can you remember? You're younger than Kemraj.
Well, okay, fair enough. I know that he would admit that. Always was. He's always my elder when it comes to the politics. Learned a lot from him. So just say, so age is just a number. Political astuteness is a learned trait.
Yes. Can you remind us of those 5 persons, if you can recall, that went into Parliament in 2006 after the elections?
Cameron is absolutely right. It was Raphael himself, Sheila, Chantal Smith, and then and myself were the first 5. I think Chantal Smith resigned, I think in year 2 or year 3, and was replaced by Lachman Punalal for the remainder of the 5-year term.
That's right.
Yeah. So
Great.
That's the first 5 persons that batted for the AFC.
And David, you've been around the Alliance for Change from the beginning stages. I guess you were a youth then.
Still I'm young, full at heart. Young, full at heart. As I said, age is just a number, as the Cameron was saying, you know what I mean? So I'm still
And with that being said, like myself, at that time, what did you see? Or were you friends with the co-founders at the time? Were there anybody that brought you, and how did you came into contact with the Alliance for Change?
Well, Raphael was my schoolhood, boyhood friend. He went to a different school, but a little fun fact: we had a basketball team in Sobrianville. Raphael used to play with DYC. It was a Diocesan Youth Center. Raphael wasn't a sportsman, I was, but Raphael was the manager of our basketball team, and we were quite successful. So we knew each other for years prior to him going into politics, because he was the first person who went into politics, I think, in 1994 at local government elections under the PNC umbrella. He went into politics. I was never interested. I mean, I was attuned to what was going on, particularly in politics. I instinctively didn't like the two parties. To be honest, I didn't know at the time. I returned, I studied overseas, and I returned to Guyana, I think, after the PPP would have won. I knew very little of their internal politics. I was so from 1992 to 97. I was just, as I said, I was trying to survive, kicking the bricks around this the fireside to ensure that I survived. 97, when they did, as you could recall, 97 and 2001, there was quite a lot of disputed elections, which led to constitutional reform and the Hermiston Agreement and those things like that. So I started paying a little more attention to politics, not active, never ever considered myself political material. And then sometime, I think in early 2005, or when the party is being formed, Raphael contacted me. Not a backstory. I'm an outdoors person. I mean, off-roading is my hobby and passion then to now. And he muted this idea that him, Camarade and Sheila is forming this party and they're having discussions, but they had no link to the interior locations. And he was aware that I frequent the interior off-roading with my the Bush Boys. Had a member of a Rotary Club. We call us the Bush Boys, and every 2 or 3 months we would take extended trips into the hinterland. So he asked if I could go there, speak to people, spread the word. And of course, I was simply doing him a favor, not under the illusion that I was being drawn into politics. And I started doing that. And I could remember one day coming straight out of the interior with some information. I can't recall exactly. He'd asked me to contact, or no, somebody in the Rupununi had heard that I was the person that was speaking and had information on the Alliance for Change. And I can remember this thing, I was in my hotel room. In those days, Lethem was not what it is today. And there was a knock on my door about 11 p.m. I was sleeping, and there was this gentleman, indigenous person, who said he rode all the way from Sand Creek, which is quite a way away from Lethem, because he heard about this party and he wanted to know much more. Of course, I didn't know much more other than what I was told, that they're forming it. And so I just give them an update as the best I could. And returning now, but he was all excited, because I don't know how he heard about it in Sand Creek, from Sand Creek. And so I returned to Tongan, immediately went to see Raphael, and they were in a meeting. This is why I can't remember where the meeting was. And I knocked on the door because I said, look, Raph, I just want to tell you, the word is spreading in the hinterland about the AFC and those things like that. And I was turning to leave, and Miss Sheila Holder, she's the person. She says, young man, where are you going? I said, well, I just did a favor there for, the party and those things like that. Sheila said, there's an empty seat there. Why don't you sit down and have and join us? Sat there, it was a room in his comrades there. I can remember Tony Vera was there, Chantel, Raphael, all those things like that. And I sat there, sat in on that meeting, invited to sit by Miss Sheila Holder. And I'm still here, 19 years. So, and it has been, that first meeting with this fella, I think it was Fredley, his name was, if I could recall correctly, and him coming so far to inquire about the party he may have just heard rumors with, the word spreading that, because I was at those times, you're in and out, you're very youthful, much younger, so you drive in and you go camp and you'd have drinks and those things like that. And it struck me that this idea was of such importance to somebody so far out, so devoid of information, because even now, our brothers and sisters in the hinterland are not up to date with information. That he could take the time out to come from Sand Creek. You have to cross the Rupununi River to get there, to come into and then find out where I'm staying. And so I said, hey, if he can do that, why can't I put an effort in there? So I was there at Ocean View on the 29th of October. And I've been here since then. It's been as Kamraj is saying, it has its highs, it has its lows, but when you equate them out, I do think that we have, as a party, has shifted the political discussion in this country, despite what the others want to say. And Kamraj is so right, Kamraj, if you could remember that we were no friends to neither the PNC nor the PPP. And that struck me as strange when I started getting involved, because I would have thought that the enemy of the friend of your friend of your enemy is your friend. Eh? The enemy of your enemy is your friend. So it struck me very early on that the PNC particularly were not favorites with the PNC. And then, of course, later, because leading up to the 2006 election, it was held in August. After, as Kathy said, the party decided we would run the election. My task, obviously, was to go and get votes. Candidates first. That's interesting. To get candidates who were willing to sign up to be representative for the AFC at the 2006 elections. And it wasn't difficult. It cost me quite a few drinks. I had to sit down and have a drink with my indigenous brothers and sisters. But I was good at that. We sat down and you give them a drink. I could remember running into signing up two candidates at the rodeo ground. They're the rodeo ground. I said I'm in Alliance for Change, bought them 2 bears, and then said we're looking for candidates, and they signed up. I remember going to Anai under a mango tree by a shop run by a fellow named McCrae, and I was able to get 2 others, who live right next door. So we got our full quota just by meeting and selling the idea as well. We had one of our great members, Stephen Andrews, who's in Woweta, who's one of our stalwarts, our very first regional councillor in Region 9. Then we did the same in Region 8. I did the same in Region 8. But coming up to the 2006 elections, guys, and this is what people have to know. There was a great cry, like now, that the list was bloated. And there was a movement on, if Kamraj could recall, no verification, no elections. And one of the reasons why we were not the favorites of the PNC is because they were supportive of the no verification, no elections. And I could recall the Alliance for Change saying, listen to me, we're new. We will contest with the list, defective or not, in 2006. And conservative wisdom is that we forced the PNC to go to the election, because obviously if we as the third party, young idealistic folks, were going to elections and they did not go, obviously we would have been by default, we would have been the opposition party. So we went. I don't think that the early PNC ever forgave us for that fact. But here are some interesting numbers, Brian and Onyx. And as you know, I love numbers, and numbers tell a story. If we sit and we look at it, in the 2006 elections, the PPP won. That's their largest ever margin. They won 36 seats. The PNC got 26, and of course the AFC got 6. They're supposed to. We got 6, and as Raphael Kemraj explained, GCOM awarded to Sam Hines. You know what I mean? And he was the prime minister. Could you imagine the prime minister of this country was squatting on a seat and and unashamedly squatting on the seat, you know what I mean? And then we would keep reminding him he was a squatter, and he would just smile, you know, in the old Sam Hines mannerism and say, "Well, I'm here. Until you move me, I'm here." The total votes, the voters list, which caused the issue in 2006, was 492,000. And the actual amount of persons that voted was 326. So literally 160,000 persons, or 69% were, as you would say, unaccounted for in 2006. We, of course, entered into Parliament. I was fortunate, and so fortunate to be able to get into Parliament with the first cohort. And immediately we realized that we were in for battle. Scrutineers, because we wanted scrutineers, you know, because allows the government and opposition to have scrutineers for their process, because we were going to a new house registration in 2008. The international community supported us, ABC countries in particular, brought tremendous pressure on the Jagdeo government for us to have a new list, and like they should be doing now, and they're doing right now, because they themselves recognized that it was a flawed list in 2006. So every equal numbers of persons which should be allocated scrutiny from the opposition and the government. That was the law at the time. Government, equal numbers. But the PPP and GCOM themselves just give all the scrutineering positions to the PNC at that time. None to the AFC and Gaproor, Everett Franklin. He won one seat. And we took it to court, and there's cases in the West Indian Law Review. And the chancellor at that time, I think Carl Singh, ruled that GCOM has to award us as a party proportional numbers. We had 5 seats, I think it worked us 20% of the opposition. They had to award us 20% of the scrutineering positions. Court ruled, appealed and failed, reviewed in the West Indian Law Review. Do you know what the two parties did that were supposed to be at war? They came in a bill piloted by, I think, the PPP and supported by the PNC. They changed the law. And the law to circumvent the courts. And we've been in that battle with these two major political parties because they saw us as upstarts, you know, and we were upstarts. I can recall once Jagdeo was president and he went to Trinidad. Of course, you know, I mean, he was always boastful, and PPP were always boastful, you know, I mean, of Jagdeo. And we took out the full page ad. We took the full page out of the heads of government conference in the Trinidad newspapers. And he was furious because we listed all the transgressions in the Trinidad newspapers of all the things that were not happening correctly in our in our country. I mean, there was no radio license, there was no public procurement commission, the corruption was rampant. Now today, corruption it makes it look like schoolboys compared to that, but it was rampant, and he was livid because when he went to the heads of government, instead of the media, him waxing lyrically about the good things he was doing, all the media were asking, but Mr. President, Mr. Jagdeo, the opposition is saying this, the opposition is saying that, and he was livid. But we took out ads. We used to take out ads wherever he went. I mean, he went to Norway as champion of the earth, and we took out an ad saying, well, not really the champion of the dirt. I think we took out ads in Scotland, and we were really, really fighting him. So by 2011, we had proven that we could stand up despite all that was thrown at us, and we went to elections again. And that time we won 7 seats, and we were awarded our full 7 seats. Interestingly, Brian and Onyx, we had a new list, a brand new list of electors, and at that in 2011, the PPP got their lowest because, of course, there was no wiggle room for a bloated list, and the PPP got their lowest ever voters, 666,000. You know, APNU got about 140, and we got about 36,000, which gives you a hanged parliament. The interesting number that everyone should note, and this is why what signifies how bloated and off our list is. With the new list in 2008, the increase in voters between 2006 and 2011 was only 14,000. Compared to what, so therefore 5 years later, the elections was run and everybody accepted, except the PP. PP has never accepted any election and they're losing it. There was election petition in 2011 under Donald Trump government, and the same thing that happened in 2015. They never pushed for it to be heard. They just like to say to their supporters, "We never lost. We haven't lost. People have cheated us." But it was there. So here I am, 19 years on. Having it is a wonderful journey. I've met some great persons along the way, some great fighters along the way, passionate persons along the way, and all of us just simply shared one vision, that for a better Guyana. And this time around, 2025, I do think that it's a very, very important election. And I do think that I would like in all previous elections, we have played a role and we've made a difference, and we will be doing so again.
Thank you so much, David. As we head into our next panelist, and no time is of the essence, we bring in former Minister within the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, Ms. Valerie Garrido Lowe. Good evening to you, madam.
Good evening.
Brian, good evening, Cameron Nigel Cutty and David, and happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary to you also.
Good evening, listeners.
So, hi, Valerie. We know that you've been a minister within the last government, but we want to know how you started the Alliance for Change. Just a quick brief history of how you started, where you were then with the Alliance for Change, and what you think about the Alliance for Change now.
Okay. First of all, I was in another party having my own political troubles, political challenges, while the AFC was, campaigning and everybody was, everybody was talking about them and whatnot. They were very exciting. So, well, I was doing my thing, my battle, but Raf came to visit me. Mr. Raphael Trotman, the Honorable Raphael Trotman, came to visit me. He paid me a visit, and he told me about the Alliance for Change, what they represented. He invited me to come over and join the AFC. So I thought about it. We had meetings. I had meetings with my team, and we decided to come over to the AFC. And we came over at the height of the campaigning and preparation for the general elections in November 2011. So, you know, everybody, campaign time, you know how it is during campaigns. Everybody busy, somebody barely spare you a look or a sentence, a movement here and there. Everybody got their own program, their own agenda, and what not to do. Fit in the whole map of things to create something and get the desired results. So my team and I looked around at everything, and while we were welcomed in a friendly way, we knew immediately we had to start working. And so we took things in hand, my team and I, and we started working. Our team, the party where I came from, our team focused mostly on the indigenous people, our party, the party then, and the faction, the team that came across with me, we continued that focus. And our team knew Region 8 like the back of their hands. So immediately at this time, we decided that the AFC will benefit from our knowledge of the Region 8 and our team. So we focused on Region 8 and we started working, traveling, everything. And when elections came, we were happy that we played a part in making sure and ensuring that Region 8 was won by the AFC.
Yeah.
And that is where we had one of our MPs, Eula Marcelo from Parmacatoy. And I would really like to take this opportunity to really thank some people. Some of them went to heaven, but we have some here still. And one of the most significant persons was Clyde Edwards, and also Naim Gafour, Andrew Karaya, Ronald Leaping, and those people. All of them worked hard day and night just to bring in Region 8. So, for me, I was happy. When you go, somebody invite you to their home or invite you to participate in something, you must be able to contribute. So we were happy with our contribution. And the AFC on the whole, after that, we decided, I spoke to my team and we decided that we will join the AFC. We will become real members of the AFC. Some of them, they were kind of it's not that they weren't happy, but I guess they felt that we should be a team assisting AFC. But eventually I told them that, it is better that we join the AFC. They are they are a party that listens and they care for people, and they treated us well, and people respond to them positively.
Valerie,
The young people, everyone. So that's it for the beginning.
yes, Valerie. Could you tell the viewers, Valerie, as a former government minister, could you tell the viewers, enlighten the viewers, how the AFC has tried while in government to deal with issues just such as transparency and accountability from your point of view?
Can you repeat? I'm still in the hinterland.
Yes, I'm saying that during your 10 years as a government minister, could you tell the viewers how the AFC
I think the AFC performed absolutely wonderfully as in government. Each minister was hardworking, brilliant, and because they cared for Ghanaians and wanted a better life for Ghanaians, each worked hard. Myself as a minister within the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, from living in the hinterland when I was growing up and visiting during my political life, hinterland always, the challenge is always jobs. You had our people had to go out to and work in the gold bush or lumber bush before they can get money to come back. And while hinterland is so very rich, hinterland is filled with gold, it's filled with lumber and diamond and magazine and every precious metal. Hinterland still suffers from many things, basic services, like I'm on data right now. There's Wi-Fi down by the office that was recently put in there, but I'm on data. Now, all of this I looked at and I decided that as a minister, my focus would be on job creation. So how do we create jobs for our people? Naturally, we have to have small industries within, certain villages, like have anchor projects. For instance, we came up with the tomato project in Parmakatoy, where we asked the farmers to plant. This is of course, we teamed up with IAST, the food, they're the food science, people. So, together with them and under their guidance, the tomato factory was set up, and the farmers in Parmakatoy, Kawa, Bamboo Creek, and Mountain Foot, they planted tomatoes to supply that factory, and then it was processed and into tomato ketchup and tomato another thing.
Yes, Valerie. It seems that the future needs to change, especially for the hinterland community.
Pardon me?
The future really needs to change for the hinterland community because they're giving us so much and we're giving them so little in return. We really need to focus on improving the lives and livelihoods of those living in the hinterland.
I'm not hip. But the opportunity to change people's lives, to create jobs for people to earn like anybody else, and that was something given. That was a vision of the AFC, and under the coalition, it came about. So it is something that still has to be pursued, because although Hinterland is so rich, I don't think there was ever any consideration like a percentage. If you take out so much gold from Hinterland, put back a percentage to be road concentrate, if you a percentage of that. So I don't think that was I never heard of that. So Hinterland was always left on a back dam and a bush, and people come out from this bush, and they're poor, many of them, and they're rough and they're everything, but they in Hinterland enriched the coastline.
Okay, Valerie, I do believe, and I understand the plight of the indigenous people, and you've mentioned it there tonight. And I do believe that our leader, our catalyst for change, would want to change the scope of how we view the people in the hinterland. And I feel as though as we bring the curtains down on this final minutes into this live stream, we would want to bring in Nigel so that Nigel can share his thoughts in regards to where we are at now and where we're heading, so that we can know what the vision is. I already see the PPP already starting a whole scenario of why are you only coming out with the vision? Why you don't share the vision? Why are you just talking about the vision? Nigel lazy, all of these things. Leader and former chair. First question. I recall you starting the Alliance for Change sometime in if I can recall, is it 2011? And 1 year later, you became the chairman of the Alliance for Change, August 4th, 2012. Can you recall that?
Yeah, actually, I got involved in politics purely by accident. What had happened was the Kemraj Ramjatan, at the time, this is before 2011, might have been around 2010, he was a lawyer for Freddie Kissoon, the same Freddie Kissoon that spends a lot of time attacking us. And I remember being in the corridor of the High Court one afternoon, and Freddie was there with Kemraj, and Freddie literally said, Kemraj, if you don't mind, I'd like to have Nigel in the team. And I joined the team, and Freddie was being sued by Bharat Jagdeo for calling Mr. Jagdeo an ideological racist. And Freddie was paranoid that the plan was that they would go before this judge, they would get a huge judgment against Freddie, and that the government would then take his house. So he was absolutely paranoid. And just to give you a little bit of background on that, Freddie Kissoon used to attack me relentlessly before that. Everything from Buxton, Brian Hamilton, who's a relative of mine, when after Brian got murdered, his father asked me to go up to the store. He would attack me relentlessly. Absolutely. So Kemraj got me in the case. And I know that there's that very famous statement. Dr. Luncheon came to came to testify for Dr. Jagdeo. Jagdeo didn't turn up. He doesn't have a turnout. He sent he sent Luncheon. And I remember the press were there and they thought Jagdeo was coming to testify. Luncheon, of course, has a superior brain. And he, I was practicing maybe for about 15, 20 years by then. Went in the box and started cross-examining him. Well, those of you, you're probably too young to know Mr. Luncheon, but he was the most opaque of speakers. Nothing, if you asked him, is there a red light, he would be very, very opaque. But anyway, he made a very, very famous statement on the cross-examination, and It literally was a chess move. And that statement was no African Guyanese was qualified to represent the country. He actually said that. And that one phrase, that one sentence by him went viral, absolutely viral. Because at that time, this was before the 2011 election, people felt that there was a lot of bias in the way the government was treating people who were not their traditional supporters. So that went crazy. And literally, this is how I got involved with the AFC. So I am driving my wife, Kathy, and I can't remember who else. I think there was a couple other people to Linden. They were holding a meeting in Linden. So I was just the driver because I wanted to make sure my wife got there safely and got back. So I got to Linden, and we were at the Market Square. And I think it was Kemraj, actually. Kemraj said, why you don't go up and say something? I said, yeah, why not? And I went up, and that was my first political speech. Linden, I think it was September 28th or something like that. And I spoke, I was very concerned. Mind you, I'd had political interest in the sense I was very concerned about what was happening in Guyana and has been happening in Guyana. And just to remind, and of course, this is probably before you were born, 1988, when I came back, the big issue was free and fair election. And there was a movement called GUARD.
That's right.
And GUARD was campaigning for free and fair elections. And just to give you context, the PPP had always been campaigning for free and fair elections. And there was a council, he wasn't officially senior counsel, a very senior lawyer called Ayub Makdoum. And Ayub Makdoum came to me because I'd spoken on the GUARD platform the same time as Sam Hines, Yusuf Assad, because all of us, I'd come back fresh out of London. We had this view the Guyana was going to change. And he came to me and he said, we want you to join the party. We want you to be the PM candidate. I said, you're crazy. I just got back. I'm 24, having a ball. And that campaign, after that, I got involved in the Electoral Assistance Bureau, which oversaw what was happening in the country, and always been at the periphery. Before that, in the UK. But to come back to the Linden presentation, spoke, and I was very, very, very concerned that Dr. Luncheon in Guyana in 2011 could actually say that no African person was qualified to represent the country in the diplomatic community. Now, the first thing that struck me, and I had young nieces who used to come up by my house frequently. And I thought, imagine, these are actually Stephen Fraser's kids. I said, imagine these young ladies, brilliant, because they were bright at common entrance, bright, just really outstanding academic students. I said, imagine growing up in a country where you cannot become the holder of the highest office in the country. And you have this now as official policy because you have Dr. Luncheon saying it. I thought, this has got to be crazy. I had no plans to leave the country. And I thought this was a seminal moment in the history of the country that the head of the presidential secretariat was bold enough to say this on the oath. And it really upset me. And that was my maiden political speech. Just to go back to 2005, when my wife came home after she'd had that conversation she referred to with Raphael and said she was getting into politics, I was about to take her to the shrink. Because I thought when Kathy came back to get married to me, she absolutely hated what was happening in the country. We got married in 1993. She literally hated it. And she kept telling me every single day that I'm going to have to make a decision. Either we migrate or she's leaving. So in 2005, when she came and said that she's joining the party, after I got over the shock, I said, what? Were you going to Alliance for Change? Guyana is so racially divided. You guys really think you're going to be able to do this? But it was a great time, and I have to commend Raphael and Kemraj. I wasn't as close as Sheila because they took a very, very bold step, and it was the inspiration of the moment. Because here you had Raphael literally in line for leadership in the People's National Congress, and you had Kemraj, who was one of the young, I would say, in line for leadership also in the People's Progressive Party. Everybody knew the country was in difficult waters, and so for them to have taken the bold step coming from those two political giants, I commended them for it. I thought it was great. At the same time, because of a lot of the disruption they had a group called Social Partners. I was president of the bar at the time, and we were trying to literally salvage Guyana. These guys came in the scene and won 5 seats. Unprecedented, absolutely unprecedented in the Commonwealth Caribbean. And they themselves, I don't think, appreciated it, because I remember after that 2006 election, I went to the party headquarters to accompany Kathy, and they were depressed. And I was like, guys, come on. Nobody else in the history of the Caribbean, no third party, none, has ever started with that. That was like Greenwich and Haynes, runs on the board. They got 5 seats, unprecedented. And I said, hey, you need to put this in perspective. Got interested. I was always there, of course, with Kathy and the campaigning. And when they came to 2011 came after Luncheon had made that statement. And 2011 also came after I had made my maiden political speech. The country was really, really divided. And, that statement by Luncheon, I think, had a lot to do with the fact that people believed that if this country continued down this path, we are going to get into very, very difficult waters. And you can't certainly have somebody like him making that statement. There was no retraction of the statement. There was no apology. And so a lot of what the campaign focused on was the fact that, we were heading into waters where substantial parts of this population were being excluded. And of course, come 2015, by then, actually, how I became chairman, so I attended, the AFC must be the equivalent of an NEC meeting. We had offices in Campbellville, and the position for chair came up, and nobody was running for it, or appeared not to run for it. I don't know if this was part of the strategy. And Raphael said, okay, I nominate you. And it must be Cameron David, or somebody said second, unopposed. And I literally fell into being chairman of the Alliance for Change. That, of course, changed my life, of course, because when you become chairman of the party, and so many people had so much hope for the party and hope for change in Guyana, I attempted to discharge that responsibility. 2015, 2014, we entered into an arrangement with APNU, and the combination prevailed. Early in 2016, less than a year after, I returned to private practice. But my motivation for getting involved both with the Alliance to Change and in politics was constitutional change, because you couldn't have an election that vested 100% of the power in a person in an ethnically divided society, and no attempt was being made to heal the contretemps between the principal ethnic groups. And so the key literally was a simple to opening a new future. And for me, unless we were going to pursue real constitutional change with a view to creating an incentive regime where our people come together and have to vote beyond just ethnic issues, it wasn't worth it. So by the end of 2015, I had submitted to the Prime Minister at the time, Mr. Moses Nagamutu, some constitutional reform proposals, and also what was necessary to set up a constitution reform commission, and some of the principal areas. That was handed over to the Prime Minister. I don't think it got much further than that. And I thought in 2016 that I would retire from active politics. Retired from active politics 2016. And then as we got past 2020, we discovered oil in 2019 December, and the money started to flow. It became, again, very, very evident that the approach of the People's Progressive Party to politics and to how they address the resources of the country was that only people that supported them or traditionally supported them were entitled to any part of this. And again, I remember the statement from Dr. Luncheon, and I remembered my nieces, who by this time were probably in university. I looked at my brother's children and my own children, and I thought, they're not going to come back to a country where it is evident from the policies, and you already had previous statements, that a significant part of this population is going to be excluded. So I said, Nigel, let's do something a lot of people don't like to do. A lot of us like to talk, but you don't do some work. Did some research, produced a paper called, what was it? The Economy and Justice, I think it was. And that gained some traction, started to do more research, and realized that what was happening here wasn't just the non-traditional supporters of the People's Progressive Party who were being excluded, but a very, very small percentage of the supporters of the PPP were benefiting. And I remember back in 2011 in the Median political speech, I made the comment that the PPP was not looking after the interests of their supporters, they're looking after the interests of a very small minority within that group. And nothing had changed. But at this time, we had a lot of money. And then when you see that you have the wanton spending of this money on projects without feasibility studies, you see that the people, particularly, I was very, very disturbed with what happened to the people in Mocha. You know, that woman in mud, you take away their property and then you just put the highway down and you give away the lots next to the highway, which these people owned and occupied before at hugely escalated prices. This country, I believe, if we continue down this path, we are heading to trouble. The sugar workers, I mean, what the PPP does to the sugar workers is really unforgivable. Every now and then you go and give them a little increase, but you're not leveling with them that the industry that they're in really does not have a lot of promise. And at the same time, you are not even training. These are your faithful supporters that have been voting for you forever. You're not even creating the opportunity for them to be able to, by their own means and training, have a better future. So across the board, what is happening here in Guyana now is that I would say 80% to 85% of this population is nowhere near participating. And then we have this huge insult where we say, oh, we give you money. In the 4th year of being in office, you suddenly wake up and decide, oh, some of this wealth has to get transferred. It doesn't come within a structure there. There's no structure. And for me, when I was fortunate enough to get elected, we need to look at the future. We know what our past is. We know what our missteps have been. We need to look at the future. And there are 5 key areas that we've said all the political parties, civil societies, and our academic community need to agree on. And forgive me for repeating them. The economy, education. There's no way this country is going to seriously benefit from this wealth if we don't educate our citizens so they can participate in the new economy. Education is the second. Health, third. Foreign affairs, because we've got issues on our border. Fourth, and poverty reduction, equally important. And I think the Alliance for Change has always, from its inception, from the time Kemraj, Raphael, and Sheila started it was a future-looking party. It attempted to break the back of racial politics, not because they just wanted to break the back of racial politics, but because the only way we can see a joint and prosperous future in which all of us have a fair shot or a fair opportunity is if we, one, break the back of racial politics, but two, we actually have a plan. And now that we have the financial resources, we have to have 15 to 20-year plans. Otherwise, we are just going to squander it. We appear to be doing now. And all of us in another 5-10 years are going to be in a very sad state. We're going to be right back where we are with the resources.
And on that note, Nigel, before you go on, I know earlier in the day while we were having our flag raising ceremony, you spoke about the new republic. How do we, the citizens, prepare for that new republic?
Well, first of all, what we are going to be doing is talking about what that new republic means. Right now, we are the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. There are parts of the country that believe because that idea originated with Mr. Burnham, they don't feel connected to it. I think in the last set of constitutional talks back in 2001, there was some suggestion that they wanted to remove it. We have to talk about a new vision for Guyana. And that vision clearly has to come within a framework of our republicanism. And we need a new republic, a new vision. And that vision has to be, must craft structures that will allow, on a permanent basis, all of our citizens to be able to have a fair shot in participating in this future other than just handouts. cash transfers are important because, of course, it's the most direct way of getting wealth transferred. But it can't be on a basis just that you wake up and somebody believes they're going to do it. It has to come within a structure. And the way we propose, and this is our position, the Alliance for Change, we're not saying 100,000, 200,000, a million, 5,000 years, whatever. We're saying first and foremost, you have to set up a commission of economists or panel of economists, the best that you can get locally and internationally, those with the appropriate experience to advise us on, first of all, when is the appropriate time in our economic and financial position and condition to be able to do structured cash transfers and how much they should be. So I can't tell you, I'm not an economist, but that panel will do it. Secondly, and I do commend Mr. Winston Jordan for this, but it's not his original idea, but I commend him for this. The cash transfers have to be targeted at our most vulnerable, and they also have to incentivize those parts of the population that are not only vulnerable, but we want to see development. So children, it's something like the Bolsa Familia in Brazil, where you say to mothers of young children in primary school, this grant that you will get is tied to the children going to school, it's tied to their academic performance, it's tied to the nutrition. The state will make sure that they get meals there, they get weighed periodically, they get medically examined periodically. And once you are meeting those targets, you get, for example, a cash transfer. One of the biggest challenges for young people, the two of you, is access to capital. The only way you're going to get access to capital to run your business is if you get capital that is not tied to a lot of securitizations. You need a junior stock exchange. You need a development bank, the focus of which and the mandate of which is for young people and women, because we need to be able to empower that section of the community to develop their entrepreneurial skills. And at the same time, we have to provide them with the financial training that allows them to continue to graduate. We need to build that professional managerial class that is going to be there to be able to manage this economy as we go forward. And that is, all of those things are going to be released in the manifesto. I hear, my colleague on the other side saying that we have nothing, but trust me, we will see the reaction at that time.
And just a follow up here, I'm hearing reports of our former president, an assassination attempt on our former president, David Arthur Granger, on our current situation in regards to safety in Guyana and Guyana Police Force. How would you address that?
You're saying there's a present security crisis, or you're referring to the past security crisis?
Present and past.
Well, I think everybody knows that the level of confidence in the Guyana Police Force, or certainly the leadership of the Guyana Police Force, is close to the floor. I don't know how you could possibly have anything looking like a modern country with the levels of scandals that are taking place in the Guyana Police Force at the upper level. It is clear, just where, and these allegations are not just coming from the citizenry, the police and their various compartments and departments are accusing each other of horrendous crimes. And so you've got a crisis of confidence. What that means is that you're not too far away from a breakdown in law and order. Because if the Guyana Police Force, the numbers that we're hearing that are in the accounts of certain police officers are where they are, there are not many industries in this country that generate that kind of income. So if you figure out what's going on there, you can just, it doesn't take a genius to realize who might actually be directing the course of this country. And that's a scary place to be. You don't want to reach a stage where you can't pull it back. You don't want to end up like Mexico. You don't want to end up like Colombia, where it's only a matter of time before the politics gets involved in the narcotics, the politics gets involved in the criminal on the world, and you can't pull it back. I mean, just think of our colleagues in Jamaica, Tivoli Gardens and the previous prime minister. The head of Tivoli Gardens effectively got deported to the United States of America, and the state had to send the military in to remove the head of that of Tivoli Gardens, and that was the prime minister's seat. Now, when you get to that kind of level, and I'm not Jamaica, I love absolutely. I think they produced probably one of the greatest heads of states ever, P.J. Patterson. But when you get to that stage of entrenchment of criminal activity and its relationship with politics, that you don't walk back from that. It's impossible to walk back. What you can hope to do is navigate as you go forward. And Guyana is at a stage where it is clear, just looking at what's going on in the head of the Guyana Police Force, generally, in the top brass and the numbers that are being called, what industries would do that? People who commit murder, and I suspect most of them, if they are wealthy enough, they will deal with the corruption at the police station. They're not going to deal with it up at the top. So we are in difficult waters. But I believe the people of this country know that, they understand it, and they know that we need a different dispensation.
Nigel, could you share about how you saw the vision of the AFC being evolved over the years?
I think the Alliance for Change has been very fortunate to have two particularly visionary leaders that are committed to a different Guyana. That's very important. Both Raphael and Kemraj, I think at the start of the program you spoke about Kemraj's passion being exactly the same today as it was back in 2005. And the passion of both of them is for a different Guyana, completely different Guyana. And if you look at the performance of the ministers of the Alliance for Change in the administration, they always kept trying to push to take the country forward. I'm not saying the other ministers did not. So in terms of the place and position for the Alliance for Change, unlike the two parties, which are mass-based parties, both of them started with strong union support. The People's Progressive Party had GAWU, the PNC had the Guyana Labor Union, the dock workers, both had very strong mass-based support when they started and kept that kind of support through their political existence. The Alliance for Change really came about with the idea of a different Guyana, the hope that we can do things differently than we have done than we've done for decades. The fact that we can walk past this racial challenge that we have, this level of insecurity that continues to pervade our not only our politics, pervades our existence. The level of suspicion, the level of apprehension that we've had, and the Alliance for Change, purely on that idea, was able to get 5 seats in its first iteration at elections, and then increase that to 7. So I strongly believe that those two leaders, they're the ones that have taken that idea, and they have demonstrated by their conduct that is what they want to do. People have different views or differing views on what happened after 2015. We are still in the process of examining perhaps our missteps at that time, so that as we prepare for next year, we are unlikely to repeat them. But I certainly want to commend both Raphael and Kemraj for what they represent and for being bold. For both of them, if you think about it, if Raphael was just maybe 1 or 2 from leadership in the People's National Congress, if he stayed there, he probably would have become the leader. But he was prepared to leave at that time because he had a different vision. Kemraj was close to the top. They put him out of the party, but then again, all he had to do is stay quiet, and he would have been smiling today. He would have been part of the gravy train. You have to, and I commend them. I personally and publicly commend them for taking the step that they did. Because at the time, like I said, when my wife came home, I seriously thought of calling Dr. Beckles and saying, "Hey, I got a little problem."
Nigel, you spoke a lot, and many others spoke a lot about Raphael. Yeah, I know time is of the essence. And we spoke a lot about Raphael, but we haven't heard Raphael's speech at Conference Center, Lillian Dahl. So I'll ask the operator to cue Raphael's speech, and then we have some final words from you guys.
The next half an hour, there will...
Even if it seems to be so hard to reach for the dream that is so far, never lose your faith in God when you're up against all odds. Life can take you through rough times, but still you will pull through. Hold on to your hopes and dreams, and there is nothing that you cannot do. Up against all odds, we were standing up against all odds. The paraphrased words of Tarlin Ramsey. Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, His Worship the Mayor, distinguished guests, friends, family, and colleagues at the head table and just behind. Today marks the turning point not only for our own lives, but predictably for the life of Guyana itself. Those of us, like myself, born on or around 1966, recognize that for almost 40 years as an independent nation, our Guyana has struggled to find its feet and to unleash the latent but yet extremely powerful potential that we know exists in this land. So desperate is this potential to burst out that we can almost feel its vibrations, but yet it remains so elusive to us that we are wont to imagine that it is almost as mythical as Raleigh's golden city of El Dorado. Why is this movement necessary? We have memorized and have been mesmerized by patriotic songs sung as children. We have mobilized to repel foreign threats, and we have girded our waist tighter and tighter from the time when a $5 note was a pound to today when it has ceased to exist altogether. We see the empty gaze of hopelessness in the eyes of our brothers and sisters, both young and old, and wonder what next. We see life becoming valueless and desperate. So desperate is the situation today in our beloved country that bright, talented, and promising youths, perhaps to escape the bullet or the big truck, swallow sachets of drugs to gain a measure of security and social mobility. The piercing cry of pain and desperation is best captured in the Rise of the Child Express Yourself survey, which shockingly declared that 69% of our young people would prefer to live in any country other than Guyana. And in the recent Economist magazine's assessment that 8 of every 10 graduates from tertiary institutions in Guyana now live and work in an OECD country. We read of older men long past their prime, having to survive by becoming night watchmen, whilst their wives and partners, once proud women, but now old and vulnerable, take to the streets to forage and beg for their next meal. And even of young girls being trafficked for prostitution and exploitation, sometimes even by members of their own family. What an indictment. Who listened? We in the AFC have listened. That is why we are here today.
All right. There you have it. Co-founder of the Alliance for Change, Raphael Trotman, and current General Secretary. Any final words, Nigel?
Well, many words, many things we didn't discuss. One of them is, of course, representing the people who are unable to represent themselves, and that's a very important platform for me personally going forward. Final words, I really would leave it to the filmers. We have Raphael here. Sorry, not Raphael. Sorry, we have Kimraj here, and we have David. They were here when this started, and I'm a Johnny come lately. I only got here in July. So
we are in the same boat.
So I would actually defer any space that you afford me to them for the closing words, if you don't mind.
Sure, definitely. David, I'll have you, and then we'll have Kimraj. Your mic.
Oh, apologies, dear. As I said before, the Alliance for Change is a unique party. It has written itself in the annals of Guyana's history. There's no other party I can think of. Well, I don't think there's no other current party that persons have tried to write off so often and always has been wrong. You know what I mean? We have journalists. Here's the power of the Alliance for Change, Onyx and the rest of the world. We have columnists and journalists who make their living, their daily bread, simply by writing every single day on the Alliance for Change. That's how they make their living. And if you think somebody that you write every single day on a party which you claim to be dead, but you're hoping it doesn't die, because if they die, they're out of a job.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
The only relevance of some of these guys are because they can say something bad about the Alliance for Change. You know what I mean? We've made them relevant. We keep them relevant. And so I have news to them. We intend to be here for quite some time, so you can go to courts and take that those things, those items, all you want, because we will not be going anywhere, and you have a lot to write about, and you can keep track of us, of the successes that we have. You know what I mean? There's one journalist, one columnist who rates his anybody that says that we will get more than one seat. Obviously, yes, yes. And then there's others who were in the bosom, part and parcel.
Yeah,
part and parcel, made every single decision we made, because as a party, we consult. There's never ever a claim that told any one leader made a decision. We would have consultations. We go back and forth. So there are persons who were there, give their opinion. Maybe not all their opinions. I mean, not everybody can be right. But they're still now making their daily bread, you know what I mean, by regurgitating and reimagining facts about the party. But that's the amazing thing about this party, which I love so much. It's so mythical that persons, you know what I mean, can reinvent facts and say any strange things so far from the truth. You know what I mean? There are things associated with the Alliance for Change, where I've been there for 19 years. Cameron's been there from formation. I mean, Brian, you've been there. And the things that they write and say, never, ever, ever. I mean, you wake up in the morning and think, oh my gosh, where did they get this from? But we're still here. We will be here. As I always say to them, you know, we'll reach you with the tape, and we'll be bracing the tape first in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Kemraj, any final words from you, our co-founder?
Oh, certainly. I got a lot to say, but I know that I will do it in just a minute. Look, it is important for a political organization that has now made its name and has been recognized and is embedded in the political landscape of Guyana to ensure that we do these archival discussion as to what transpired before. As two young men, you probably didn't know a number of the things that I mentioned, some of the factors and considerations that got us off, the convergence of events that made this thing happen, the personalities around at that point in time, and all of that. But of course, sometimes we don't like to write these days, but at least these things are videoed here and they're kept on the records as to what got us and from whence we came. From whence we came is always an important consideration. For the humans in communities, in political organizations, in business organizations, and professional, whatever they be. We must know from whence we came by virtue of having a chit-chat with the people that were there. And also, on the same score, like with people like Nigel Hughes, where are we going? And I'm glad that he mentioned that he's going to come out with his vision statement and pathways to the future in relation to all of this. I also want you youngsters, finally, to make sure that as a political party, the individual effort and the collective effort merge to ensure that we do all the things like a political party. You got to do your national conference. You got to do your management committee meeting. You got to do your barbecue and raise funds. And you got to do the work of getting our message across to the people on the ground. Don't just yap on the stream and the email stream and this stream and all that. You got to be there with the people. They got to watch you in the eyes and see that this is a bright young kid coming up and he talking honestly and all of that. And you have to maintain integrity, honesty, accountability in your personal lives. And then is when the people out there are going to pronounce on you and say, well, that's a good fella for the... And because he's in AFC, you give the AFC further impetus. Remember, AFC is an abstract thing. It is not human. It doesn't have flesh and bones. It's the people within it that is going to take it places. And I want to urge that you do exactly as I am saying here, because that is how a political party will move on. And finally, better readers make better leaders. I want plenty of you guys to start doing lots more reading, because I mean it is getting like a not very interesting these days. But please, I know Brian and you, Onyx, love to read. Carry that and bring in some people too into your youth leadership there to take this thing to the next generation. Thank you very much.
Great words by our co-founder, Kemraj. Final words, Brian, and then we wrap up in a minute.
Well, Onyx, I think we have scratched the surface tonight, and we've shown our retrospective of where we came from, and for those viewers who did not know and understand the Alliance for Change and where it came from, to now understand that and to now embark with us on a mission to where we're going and where we plan to take it in the future. And I think we have a platform here to host a lot more of these seminars, webinars, to have persons, come and educate the public as to how things should be done in the country and not, the way it's being done and handled right now.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. And to our listening public, do look out for more of these, like Brian said. The Youth for Change will be involved so much in these sessions, seminars, open days. So look out for all the posters and flyers on our Alliance for Change group and also our Youth for Change. I want to thank everybody that came in today, all our guests, Valerie, David, Nigel, Kemraj. And I also want a special thank you to our co-founders, Kemraj Ramjatan, Sheila Holder, God bless the dead, and Raphael Trotman. It was a pleasure being here with you tonight on this special edition of the Alliance for Change, then, now, and the future. My name is Onyx Duncan, on behalf of Brian Mabrega. I want to say, better must come.